Well, guys, to me it really looks the same. You know, close up he has pretty good control, but as soon as he starts to look across the room, the eyes drift out and they stay through a couple of blinks. And again, to me, that's a sign that he's not controlling as well as he can, and it's not going to get better from here.
So when you say stays through a couple of blinks, mean they stay misaligned and he blinks these?
Yeah, watch the movie. Watch the movie. Watch the movie. That eye's turned
Yeah,
out.
I saw it.
He starts
Yep,
to
I
pull
saw
it in,
it.
but before he really wasn't.
Mhm.
And that's going to vary depending how tired he is, that sort of thing. But you know, that to me is not great control, and that's why I think, you know, that's why I've made the recommendation I did.
So do you think the glasses are
What are you
making any
watching?
difference for the misalignment?
Well, let's put it this way. He's still drifting even with the glasses, so even if they're helping, they're not doing the trick completely.
17, 12.
Okay.
You know, it's what we talked about. At this point, I would not take away the glasses because he's been focused into them. He's used to focusing with them. But as a medicine, I don't think they're good enough. I guess that's the best way to put it. And I know you had seen Dr. Tredici, who on his exam felt the same way.
Yeah, he felt they weren't working for the strabismus.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
Or partially working, we'll say, but not completely.
Okay. Is there anything else you need Trevor for?
No.
Would you want to?
No,
Okay.
no, I was just looking at my notes. Nope. He looked, you know, my measurements today were really exactly the same as they were last time.
And that was, what date was that?
Let me take a look.
Because I think we first saw you in June.
See, well, we first met in June, right?
Are your measurements the same as then?
It was a little worse, but yeah, more or less the same. More or less the same. And then the last one was in November.
So basically the same from June and November.
Maybe a little worse. Yeah, on any given day, excuse me, on any given day, he can control it sometimes a little better than others. So there's some variability, but more or less the same thing.
Okay, so you would continue to recommend the procedure?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, in my mind, it's the same conversation we've had. The vision's good. If I'm able to get his eye to drift here, that means when he's tired, sick, stressed, his control's probably not even as good as we're seeing here. And again, you know, it's not going to get better on its own. Eye misalignments don't get better on their own.
But he's currently stable at the same level he's been at for the entire time you've seen him, right?
Yeah, you can look at it that way.
Hey, Dad.
Yes.
And 2 and 1/3 plus 1 3
Multiply that by 2 on both sides.
I know.
Okay. Can you guys, how about if you guys go together out in the lobby and you can watch the movie?
Yeah,
out
you
there?
can go watch the movie, okay?
Dad.
No, you go too.
No,
Aw,
that's Mom.
but I have to explain this to Dad.
You can explain it to me later.
Come on,
I'm
Dylan.
almost done.
It's okay.
That's okay. He needs the
And
doctor
the
here has to
doctor
get
is
going.
busy. Don't complain. The doctor's busy. His time is the most important.
It'll only be a second anyway.
Voice, so.
And you only get a stick.
Okay, stick together in the lobby, guys.
Okay,
Follow. Back out where the flowers are.
Yeah,
Fred.
turn right there.
Left.
turn right there and just stay in the lobby.
Straight ahead. So, Dr. Cassidy recommends surgery only if the eyes are misaligned 50% of the time.
That's his opinion. I don't think most pediatric ophthalmologists would recommend that, because by the time they're misaligned 50% of the time, you've already probably lost. There's the risk you lose vision one eye versus the other, which hasn't happened with him, but there's also the risk of losing depth perception. And his comment in the notes that you sent me that says that you don't lose depth perception, that I don't agree with. I don't think that's considered common knowledge.
Where was that? I'm trying to find that.
I read it at some point when I had first seen it. I don't see it now, but
Okay.
whatever, or it gave me the impression that what he was saying was that you can go with the eyes misaligned for weeks, months, or years, and once they're straightened, your depth perception will come back perfectly. And that's really not the case.
I was wondering that. How does one lose? Because depth perception is a combination of having the eyes misaligned, but it's also related to the brain, right?
This is all a brain function, right? This is all a brain function. And, you know, as soon as you start to let an eye drift, he shuts off the vision, so now he's not getting binocular vision. So there's no way he's going to have depth perception when the eyes are drifting out. And I can tell you just from experience, and I can give you extreme examples of adults whose eyes drifted out for many years. You can straighten the eyes, they can keep the eyes straight, but you generally do not expect them to develop perfect depth perception if they've been drifting out long enough.
Okay. So even if the eyes are searching beyond a certain age, for example, if
Well, not so much age, beyond a certain time period if the eyes are drifting. Because I can show you adults that I see who maybe their eyes started to drift, but they were controlling and the control just broke down, and if you straighten their eyes in a relatively short period, they'll redevelop depth perception.
within a short period.
Well, when I say a short period, I'm saying don't wait years with your eye drifting out. And that was, I thought, that's what I sort of disagreed in that note, was it gave the impression that you can go with the eyes drifting out forever and, you know, operating, 10 years or, that sort of thing, and expect perfect depth perception to come back.
Okay. I understand, I think. I don't understand how the depths... Yeah, I had that impression too, that it was okay if the eyes were misaligned because you only lost your depth perception when the eyes were misaligned. And once they were... So if the child spent most of the time aligned, he would still be able to have perfect depth perception.
When the eyes are aligned.
Yeah.
But as soon as the eye starts to drift, obviously you're just using one eye, so there'll be no depth perception or peripheral vision. And if the eyes are drifting enough during the day, you can have some permanent loss of depth perception. He still has good depth perception. I mean, I'm not holding that saying, oh my goodness, things are breaking down from there. But the longer he goes, I mean, again, my only point for saying that is in no way do I expect that if you look at somebody's eyes drifting out 30 or 40% of the time for many months and years, that I expect them to redevelop perfect depth perception.
They won't happen.
I
Right.
don't think so. I
Yeah.
won't promise it, let's put it that way. I think the standard, I go more by what Dr. Tredici felt, which is if it's drifting at a distance with the glasses, again, it's not going to get better, and you take your risk that it's going to get worse. And you could say it's been stable, but I agree with that. It has been stable, but it's not going to get better without treatment.
Right. It's like 5% or better, and the rest are either the same or worse. Right?
Without treatment?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody gets better without the treatment.
Okay.
Excuse me.
But since he's currently stable, what's the harm in waiting to see what happens?
See what happens?
To see if he just stays the same and he doesn't seem to have a problem functioning through his day.
Uh-huh.
And hardly, very few.
But at a distance, his eye is drifting out, even with the glasses, and he's just using one eye.
That's with you putting your hands in front of his face. When you don't do that, he doesn't do that.
All right, if you're saying you never see the eyes drift with glasses, that they're completely straight with the glasses, then A, I would say do nothing, and B, I disagree with that. That's not what I'm seeing. That's not what Dr. Tredici was seeing during his exam.
Well, I clearly saw it today. I mean, it was plain as day.
Yeah, but Dad says I'm breaking him down, so, all I can say is based on my experience when the eyes drift as much as his are drifting, and the control is poor, the way I've seen it every time in the office, the recommendation is surgery.
All right. So in that theory, then what's going to happen go down the road if we don't do anything?
I think we've had this conversation a few times, which is you're taking the risk that he will start to lose depth perception permanently, lose peripheral vision, and then the surgery, which will be needed, may not be as successful.
Right. So the longer we wait, the less likely the surgery is successful.
Possibly, if you're asking me worst case scenario, yeah.
Is there a way to tell? So Dr. Cassidy is basing his 50% misalignment on observations of teachers, peers, parents. But to me, that seems like a really nebulous way to even determine.
I don't even know what he means by that. I will tell you, listen, I will give you, this is all I've been doing for 20 years, like him. My approach is you don't wait until it's at 50%. I think if you wait till it's at 50%, you've got the real risk that once you straighten the eyes, the brain hasn't been using the eyes together, and it will just drift again. And that's a higher reoperation rate. If you tell me you've got somebody whose eyes have been drifting out 50% of the time for any period, they need the surgery, but I think there's a much higher risk of reoperation. That meaning that they're going to drift again. Now, there is even now. So if you're saying we've been watching and everything's great, I will say that's fine, but that means he's also been going this long, not using the eyes together all the time, which means if and when he does have the surgery, there might be a higher risk that he needs a second surgery down the way.
So if he did the surgery now, so Dr. Cassidy talks about some loss of vision. Like he gives some specific, if and when I do recommend surgery for him, his risk of vision loss is well under 1%.
Well, that's the complication rate. I mean, there's always a risk of surgery. Even though we're operating on the surface of the eye, there is always the risk that there could be infection, there could be a perforation, there could be loss of vision, loss of the eye. That's extraordinarily rare. But can it happen? Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. There's a risk of anesthesia. So, as far as I'm looking at his note now,
so that's nothing particular to him. That's just general vision loss.
Well, that's the risk of surgery. I mean, in 20 years, I don't think I've ever seen anybody lose vision, but can it happen? Sure. And I don't know where he's getting these numbers of saying 5% at this point. I honestly have no clue what he means by that, of where he can say that if we did surgery now, there's a 5% risk of crossing, and if he waited, then there is not. So
yeah, I have no idea what he means by that.
I don't know what he means, but I don't know how you can say that either. And if he's saying that doing surgery when the eyes are crossing less than 50% of the time has a higher reoperation rate, I don't agree with that either. I would say it's the opposite. Intuitively, if I'm waiting until the eyes are really drifting all the time and the brain has stopped trying to use the eyes together, that's where I think there's a higher risk of the eyes drifting again afterwards. But again, one of the risks of the surgery is that the eyes could drift again, either in or out, requiring another surgery afterwards, and you have to be ready for that.
So do you have an idea, if he had surgery, for example, now, what would be the chance of becoming cross-eyed, or?
No, and nobody has that real number.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at eye muscle surgery overall, I'm going to tell you it's probably a 10 to 15% reoperation rate. That reoperation rate may be over a lifetime, but it can always happen.
Okay. So you recommend surgery for Trevor now based on his poor control and the degree of misalignment he has?
If with the glasses his eye is still drifting, which is what I've seen, and what I've seen every exam, then yes, that's when I would recommend and that was what Dr. Tredici also felt.
Yeah, he noticed also, right?
He felt what? The glasses are not to stop the thing; is to make his eyes aren't as tired through the day, and that's all they're for.
That's absolutely not right.
No, your eyes are
No.
supposed to be for the misalignment.
Yeah,
The glasses were
the
supposed to
idea
be
of
for
the
the
myopic
misalignment.
correction is to try to force him when he looks through optically to focus more. The idea being that in some cases that will help pull the eyes in. I don't think that would do that when it's a big enough misalignment, but it does no harm and he's gotten used to it. But if they're not working, then if you're saying that I'm doing this to try to keep the eyes straight and the eyes still aren't straight, that to me is not a perfect plan.
I don't actually think that's why they're doing it, but that's fine.
I think that's why they're doing it. That's why they're prescribed, is to try to overcorrect him and help the misalignment.
That's fine. That's just not my opinion.
Well, I've given you my opinion.
Right.
And we've gone back and forth on this. You've now seen 3 doctors. 2 were recommending surgery, 1 is not. Has anything gone worse? No. Do I think it's reasonable to keep waiting? Not necessarily. Do I think it's you got to drop everything and do it tomorrow? No. No, but on the other hand, I'm not going to change my opinion.
I'm not. At least I'm not asking you to. But the other actually both doctors recommended that we not operate.
That's not what Dr. Tredici
No,
put in
that's
his
not what
note.
Dr. Tredici said.
Okay.
Tredici said
There's
to
no reason.
follow
There's
your
no reason to
recommendation.
discuss
His
it.
note, actually, I have his note. He's actually said, go back to Dr. Cassidy, whose notes he had, said go back for surgery. Those are his notes. But I've given you my opinion, that's all I can do. And, I've given you the risk if you don't do it. And you're right, he's remained stable all this time, so you're right about that.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you think waiting, for example, a couple more months till maybe April would maybe not be detrimental?
No.
And
No, at no point have I said that this is an emergency. But if you're asking me, should we wait? Is he going to get better? No. Is status quo good? I don't think so.
Okay. And if, say, for example, he had surgery, his eyes crossed, and he had to have surgery redone, I don't know if you have information on how successful resurgery is.
It's about the same 10%. So it's really based on movement and vision. If you've got good vision in each eye, if you come to me and say, I've already had surgery, but I have good vision, good movement, it's probably statistically still about an 85% chance that next surgery does the trick. So every time you go in for an eye muscle surgery, and this is where I don't know where he gets his statistics, but it's generally thought every time you go in for an eye muscle surgery, it's about 85% success rate, depending on the studies.
Okay. And your interpretation of Tredici's notes were that he also recommended surgery.
I'll pull it up again.
Sorry.
Yeah, be quite honest. I've given you my impression, and I'm not going to change it. Well, I respect these
I'm
others,
not
but
asking you to change it.
but-
I just,
yeah,
didn't-
that
I'm
was
not
my
good at
impression.
reading these.
Yeah, no, let me pull it out because I just had it. And patient was instructed to follow up with Dr. Cassidy for further treatment and possible surgery. I did notice an intermittent alternating exotropia with and without glasses. I don't see that the glasses are helping with the eye alignment.
Okay. Let me see.
Yeah.
The only reason there would be vision loss is if something went wrong in the surgery, right?
Well, yeah, it would have to be a complication, yeah, but understand, again, I'm not it probably is well less than 1%, but like or not, you gotta be ready for any of that. It's the same sort of thing. There's the risk of general anesthesia. I only use pediatric anesthesiologists. I've never seen a problem in my career, but like or not, you gotta be ready for that.
Yeah. Okay. So surgery's postponed. The chance of vision loss would be increased. No, that's not. My question doesn't make sense. Now that I understand it, so that, yeah, okay. I had a different feeling from his email that it was somehow related to his surgery, that the vision loss, and that doesn't make sense now.
Well, if he's talking about complication, then yes, but that complication will always be there.
It's a constant. It's a constant value, regardless of whether it's
yeah,
done now or later.
Yeah, right.
Because the impression I had was if we wait and do his method, then the vision loss changes, but it doesn't. It's a constant. Okay.
No, what I thought he was saying is that, right, there's a risk of the surgery, but there'll always be that risk of the surgery.
Right.
And that doesn't change when you do it. His feeling is that that we're still in good enough shape that you can watch.
You disagree?
I disagree. If I see it drifting, even with the glasses, and he doesn't immediately pull it in, to me that's a sign that it's not going to get better at this point after considered surgery, and that's how it presented it.
Right. He's saying his percentage is 90%. But
Mine probably is as well. I don't know, but that's anecdotal, and that's also short term, because I'm even saying over 20 years is short term, because some of these patients may need surgery 15, 20 years later,
Right.
and so that that you have to take into account. But if they can go a long time using the eyes together, even if they need it again, it can be fixed.
yeah, because the brain is accustomed to using
It's a
the
brain
eyes.
function, and that's really my only point of all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me look again at his email. Have you ever seen any of Dr. Cassidy's patients?
Yeah, but that does have a
Bearing on it.
that I really don't want to
Yeah.
make a comment in that case.
I'm just trying to figure out if, overall, which one is more, which method is more successful, I guess. Because honestly, I'm not well versed in this. I don't know this stuff.
Right.
And it's extremely difficult.
Now, I understand you've received two different thoughts, but if you want to follow with him and let him keep watching, that's fine. You know the parameters you're looking for. I just think, as I say, I think he needs surgery. It's not going to get better given on its own. I feel that the control is not as good as you think, and I don't agree with waiting until they're out by 50%. That's the only thing where I'll say I don't think a lot of us would agree with that. But that's, if you're saying it's 40%, not 50% that he's out, doesn't matter. If the glasses aren't working, it's not going to get better from here.
Well, the fact that you can't really tell what 50% is. I mean, how do you
Well, that's a
estimate?
good point as well. Yeah.
That's just completely vague and obscure. There's no way
Well, it
you're
depends.
going to be able to tell that.
Also, how tired you are on any given day. I agree with that.
I
So-
think that's just, to use that parameter,
Well,
to me, just disvalidates
all I can
it.
say is, in my mind, every time I've seen him, I think the vision's good. and he still has good depth perception, but I think the control is such that I would recommend surgery. And I'm just going to have to leave it at that.
Okay. Okay. I know your time is really valuable. I'm just trying to think if I have any more questions here. So he's basically stayed the same over this time period, and 85% results in surgery. Okay. And in your impression, pretty much the sooner the better, as far as having...
Well, I've said that from the beginning, that I thought that the control was such that it should be done. And that's sort of where I've left it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so some of my questions, like the chance of having his eyes crossed if surgery were done now versus in a year, that's not going to change, is it?
Respectfully, I think it's a higher risk of the eyes drifting again the longer you wait.
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
I would still say that there's the risk no matter what. So I'd be ready for it no matter what. The hope is everything's going to be perfect. There won't be crossing, nothing like that, but the risk is it could drift no matter what.
Yeah. And the age or time frame when waiting is detrimental is losing depth perception.
Depth perception and, when they're younger, losing vision.
Okay.
And you've said in the past that the cutoff is about 8 years old when you're not going to lose vision, right?
Lose vision, but depth perception and peripheral vision throughout life. Yeah, but that's a little different. We're talking about, quote-unquote amblyopia, where the vision in the one eye gets shut off. And that I'm not really worried about with him.
Okay. So up to about 8, he won't lose vision.
No, I'm
But he
not
would
worried
lose
about that.
depth perception.
Well, that's the possibility.
Yeah, peripheral. Right. Okay. I can't think of any other questions here.
Yeah, hopefully that helps. But I can't. I don't agree with everything that he said. The problem is, if you go for 10 opinions, you might get 5 on each side.
Right. He says he has moderate to good control over the misalignment.
Well, that's where I disagree. I thought it's moderate control at best. Close up, I think he has good control. At a distance, I don't believe he does. And that was my point.
Right.
And that's what Dr. Tredici felt as well when he
Right.
mentioned that he was seeing a drift with the glasses.
Based on Thurston County. Alright. Currently given mirror tests. Okay. His chance of crossing, if surgery were done with his current abilities, is higher than 5%.
I'm going to say,
You don't understand that?
I'm going to say this. I've recommended surgery.
Yeah, okay.
All right, and that's where I want to end it.
Okay.
I've recommended surgery. I've given you my reasons.
Yes.
I've also given you where I, don't understand some of what he was saying.
Okay.
It's really all that I can do.
Yeah.
Okay, but to give you
Right.
numbers like that, number one, I think it's a ridiculous number if you think about it, because 5 or 10% is high enough, and I would tell you as a parent, be ready for it. But what's the difference between 3% or 5%? You gotta be ready for all of these complications.
Right.
Exactly. So to start playing that sort of game, the more that I think about it, doesn't make sense to me anyway. Because if I told you, wait a year, it's going to be 4%, what does that mean? That's a high enough percent. And that's why I would just quote what's been standard quoting of eye muscle surgery as a whole. There's an 85% chance that one surgery does the trick for good. there's a 10 to 15% chance over a lifetime that another surgery need to be done, whether it's for the eye turning out, turning in, or a new problem.
Right.
And that's all that I can quote yet, and that's a high enough risk that I would tell you we always have to be ready for it.
Okay.
You all right?
Thank you for your
Thank you.
time. Appreciate it.